You're listening to the Paranormal UK Radio Network, and now it's time for the Paranormal Peep Show.
Hi, welcome to the Paranormal Peep Show on the Paranormal UK Radio Network. My name is Neil Ward and I'm joined once again by Andy Chaplin. Andy, how are you?
Yeah, pretty good, Neil. Surviving the communist regime that's going on that's censoring freedom of speech. So if anyone says anything offensive, be prepared to be dragged away to one of Stalin's gulags.
Well, I've got a whole list of things I wanted to say, so that scraps this show then. We better talk about safe stuff, but that's actually part of the topics of tonight's thing, because we do have the authors of this wonderful book that I am reading called The Eternal Avatar, and they talk about how the system tries to dumb us down, which I'm sure Andy is aware of. So welcome once again to Philip Kinsella, and your co-author of this book is Chris Mays. Welcome to both of you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having us. Thank you.
Thank you, Neil. Thank you, Andy.
Thank you. So, Philip, if I can start with you, we've obviously had you on before talking with your brother, part of the Twin Souls radio show that you used to have on the Paranormal UK Radio Network, and you've forged ahead writing more books, and you're still doing demonstrations as a medium and things. So this is a slightly different book from a lot of the stuff where you talk about abductions and things. You've split off and gone into a slightly different thing, talking about the whole thing of meaning of life. Why are we here? How did this book start off? What was the kind of germination of that idea?
Well, it started off when Chris and I were in a pub with another friend, and Chris suggested it more than anything. And I thought, what a great idea that would be, if we could turn the book into something like The Eternal Avatar, because we were talking about human genesis, the reality of that, not the fairy tale version that most people still believe today. And of course, the interest in the reincarnation process. I think it's very important for us as a species, because in life, most of us are just treading that wheel that the system wants us to be trapped in. And there are important questions that both Chris and I wanted to ask, to present to the public, to the readers, about our sovereignty, our actual sovereignty, and why it is the system has deliberately segregated certain areas of research. And they are three of them, although, most people will assume that they remain in their own separate categories. One is UFOs, the reality of that. The other one is life after death, and of course, creation. And one wonders why, the system has such a hard time accepting or embracing any of these theories. So it was actually Chris who set about the idea for the book. And over to Chris.
Yeah, because I mentioned the word avatar, didn't I? Even in the conversation, yes. The body like an avatar, the spirit coming in. And so we were living these experiences within this shell, this avatar, so to speak. And then just led on from there. And I didn't realize what I mentioned until Philip said, Chris, you mentioned this, let's make that into a book. And it was all systems go, wasn't it, on that front? Because once we got started, we had the idea, and because we both had the experiences, we had synchronicities, we had so much to give, we had so much insight and experiences that we wanted to convey, along with facts and history, and let people know what's going on, and to unpeel the layers of illusion and get to the truth of it all.
Yes, you see, Chris is a twin. He's got a twin brother. I have a twin brother. Chris and his family used to have a Labrador called Prince. We had a Labrador called Prince. So the other thing is that Chris also recalls his incarnation process, which I will say is very, very rare. Most people have memories of past lives. And of course, Chris didn't have any regression or hypnosis, and I, with my memory recall of past lives or indeed the other side, 2 of them I had. So we decided, well, let's discuss this. Let's look at the importance through the sovereignty of the spirit. And most people assume, well, we're here and then we die. Well, that's no problem if they want to believe that. And most people also believe, well, there's only heaven and earth. But we've discovered that there is more than that in terms of interdimensional connections. But we also wanted to cover the other darker area, which is a reality of what's going on the planet at the moment, and why it is the system that we serve has deliberately hijacked this planet, or a certain force perhaps that's still here, that is dumbing us down. And Andy, as we know, don't get Andy involved in those subject matters, because he will tell you how it is, and rightfully so. And I did laugh when you used the word, I think it was clown world that we're in, Andy. So it humors me most definitely when you say we're in clown world.
We are. It's and I've even got where are we?
Oh, he's going into the man in black's jacket. Look,
I've got this.
Oh yeah, your little hooter thing.
My little hooter.
A while.
So what we wanted to do was, we decided that we could construct a book slightly different, that talks about incarnation and also varied deities, most notably Thoth, because we do know that within science that life can be created through light. And of course, Thoth, as people know as one of the Egyptian deities, actually most people assumed was extraterrestrial in nature and had been evolved through light and not through the normal reproductive system that we go through. And this posed some very interesting questions about our real sovereignty. And what was remarkable through the work was Chris's channel poetry, because we decided that Chris would write a piece of poetry for each chapter that denoted the kind of chapter title, and it's very moving. So it's a very different book. It's not just one about near-death experience or past life memory or regression. It is asking the penultimate question about what we are as humans and our overall purpose, because to us, it was maddening that we're living and, we're being operated by a system that it cares not for these penultimate questions that will really reinforce our place within time and space. So, yeah.
So do you think that do you think there's a connection between the ramping up of the dumbing down of the human race and basically a communist globalist regime taking over the planet, and whatever this object is that is Atlas 31 hurtling towards Earth and increasing speed allegedly, and Chinese UFOs having missiles being thrown in it as well? Are we under a kind of like an alien attack, but they're keeping it kind of quiet-ish?
To me, yeah.
To either of you?
Yeah. It's not just now. We always have been under attack. It's been gradual and gradual. Now they've ramped it up. Now people are becoming more aware. I think people are becoming more enlightened. So now we're actually seeing the shadows now. Before they were always around us, and in respect to being dumbed down, always have been. It's only now that we realise how much dumbing down we've had in the past. Some are still quite happy to be in that way. It's about that inclination, want to see the world for what it is, because it scares them. And I think there's a lack of information with regards to who and what we are, which is why again we wanted this book to prod people, make people question the reality that they're in, because the system is so overloading ourselves. As you know, our sympathetic system isn't graded or meant for the problems of the world. People just crack with the amount of information that's coming in now with all the problems, and that's what they want. Put you in fear, and then your IQ drops, and then you don't think rationally. So this is the issue. We're on a psychic and spiritual attack, and that has a fundamental problem, because when they're doing that, we're not able to get outside of ourselves and see the problem on the outside. We're inside the problem, so we need to calm down, know who we are. So we need to go down this avenue of who and what are we, because otherwise we're going to lose ourselves with microchipping, transhumanism, and then before we know it, we've looked at what we've lost before we've realised what we had to lose to begin with. So and with what's all paranormal, they're happy with paranormal things to go on if no one gives an answer for it. And then there's so many issues going on with UFO threats and wars. It's becoming very messy, and I think that's the way they want it. People are starting to lose the truth, because truth now is wrong and wrong is now right, and it's just upside down, and that's one of their ways, is to get people so lost. And with truth, you find yourself in truth, don't you? And when that's gone, everyone's lost their bearings. People look for a savior, people look for a light, so people are looking for inspiration and looking at people, and then people become false idols, so then people are following the wrong people. It's a time to really stop what you're seeing and go inwards. This is an inward time. As much as you're seeing everything, focusing on now is your power, not worrying about tomorrow or what happened yesterday. So this is very much it. Everyone has to do this, and not collective. Can't look for someone else. We have to all do it. And I mentioned about the light, which we can mention later on in this podcast. But yeah, we all need to look for our light within us.
What are your views on the Atlas 31 object,
Philip?
Yeah, that's interesting. There's a third one, isn't it? There's the third one to come or slingshot into our solar system. And the gravitational force that's holding it is, well, controlled. One of the things that really annoys me more than anything is NASA, never a straight answer. We all know that, but also the Pentagon.
Yeah.
And also this freedom of information. It's never going to happen as far as those dragons are concerned, because, as we've argued, theoretically and constructively argued, if they inform the public of what really was responsible, what the force was behind this, the public will be horrified, because they'll realize that this is not what the system, and especially through the media, sold the public. So the system has itself to blame now, because people are asking questions, not just about the reality of UFOs, which have always been here and have been for a very, very long time, but also about what's happening out in space. And, because we're blind to it, no one, can go up there and look for themselves, because, one, we don't have the technology, the general public haven't means to access that. But also, interestingly, is this: they have these most amazing satellite systems that can chart billions of light years away. And yet when it comes to places like the moon, we get grain images. It's this, and I know people say, oh, they roll their eyes up, but this is a fact. These satellites can actually pinpoint a bubblegum wrapper near a drain in New York. So why aren't we getting these images central to the main orbit of the moon that's right next door to us? And I know people say, oh, conspiracy. No, it is a reality. This information has been going on for a long time. Now, this device that's on its way is very interesting. Because it looks as though it's got some kind of propulsion, but already they're saying, oh, it's just a comet. So I don't know. I think perhaps it's possible that we do have an extraterrestrial presence on Earth. In fact, we are all extraterrestrial. I mean, if you think about it as the human, we tend to think, oh, we're just the human being in the flesh and blood mechanism, and here we are, a biological construct. But we argue of the soul, the spirit, that is and may not be from this reality. This comes from another dimension of reality. After all, the Egyptians were desperate to get their soul or spirit out of this realm and up towards the Orion star system. So I think a lot of the things the system is doing is corrupted, and nothing's new there. Not just about our sovereignty, but also the past and what's going on out there that we have no access to. So, they're always wanting you to look one way, when actually they're doing that because they don't want you to look the other of what's really going on there.
They can't control it all, though, can they? There's only so much that they can distract you with. And we are managing to peek through the cracks of some of their kind of stories and secret histories and things like that. So people are wisening up, especially with the age of the internet. They've given us a tool in one hand to play around, and now they're starting to realize that the genie is out of the box, and now they're trying to restrict what we're seeing on that. They're bringing all these laws to try and stop us and things. I was going to come to Chris just to sort of briefly touch upon. I understood that you had read one of Philip's books, Guardians of the Dead.
Guardians of the Dead.
Was that how you first found out about Philip's work, or had you known of him beforehand? Or
I heard of him. His name came up at work, so funnily enough, and so I thought, oh, Philip Kinsella, and so I looked, and the book came to me. It was a gift, actually, so I read it, and things were happening. Things were the coincidences in my life was playing out on the next page that I was reading that evening.
Oh, wow.
That's really strange. Like feeling cold, extremely cold. This was in the summertime, and then reading that he was having healing. It was extremely cold, and this was only moments ago when I was feeling this, and so many other synchronicities. And there was a light around the book, and I could see lights in the room. There was movements, and then I was starting to get a conversation in my head to reach out to Philip, to speak to him. And I've never had that before. And there was this pull, there was this need, and I had this impression of how Philip was feeling, and in his situation in life. So I thought this is I can't ignore this. I have to reach out, and so I did. I just found a contact, reached out, and then lo and behold, we met. And it wasn't a case of meeting online. I just know it was important to meet in person, and I'm glad I did. And it was memorable, because it was just like. It's like two atoms, it's two fusions. It was just amazing.
It was incredible. I have to say also that, this also brings into the equation of synchronicity, of destiny as well too, because, most people think that their lives are they run willy-nilly. But we're looking into order as opposed to chaos, and that there are some form of life mapping beyond this realm. And Chris and I both discussed, what system are we from? Because within his incarnation process, he remembers coming in to this realm. And, we wanted to explore these subject matters of synchronicities, of connections, of soul links, which are very important. Because, although we're all walking this life, there are other souls out there that do connect with us on an amazing level. And Chris had walked into my life when I was in a very dark place, where I felt like I was just doing things mechanically, and I couldn't move forward. And it's amazing how he seemed to open the door, and so much more. We had so much in common, and we just clicked, and it was just like an amazing connection between the two of us. And so we decided, well, let's work on a project, and let's explore these deeper questions about life, about purpose, about what we're doing here, and damn the system. I mean, the book also is about giving people hope, all of us hope, to know that it doesn't matter if you're rich or you're poor, famous, which is a big illusion, or not. It doesn't matter. That we all have purpose, that we all have the power to transform ourselves. And this is the book also that tells people that you have that power, not the system, because people are giving it power, that's feeding that power. And I know Andy with his clown horn. But, I know that you'll be there, like, with the masses, bless you, ready to bring the system down, which we all would love to do. And I think it's important that a lot of people are now awakening, because they know what's going on. It's quite clear, it's quite transparent about the lies and the propaganda, and also the exploitation of conscious dissidents, which is starting to break away. I think this is important for us to note. Yeah,
I'll tell you what I'd like to see, Philip, not so much the collapsing of the system that we've got. I would actually like to see a circumventing of the system. I would like people to kind of say, well, that's lovely. You have your system, you have your little communist shit over there, and we'll create something much better over here and just leave us alone. that's
Yes, I agree, Andy.
I'm afraid we have to take a break here, gentlemen. So what we'll do, we'll resume in just a second or two. But for the moment, you're listening to Philip Kinsella and Chris Mays being interviewed by myself, Neil Ward, and Annie Chaplin on the Paranormal Peep Show on the Paranormal UK Radio Network. And we're talking, amongst other things, about their book, The Eternal Avatar. So we'll be more of that in just a moment. Stay tuned.
Today's the best day of my life! Woohoo! Listening to the Paranormal UK Radio Network.
Join Andy and Neil every month on the Paranormal Peep Show, part of the Paranormal UK Radio Network, for fun, frolics, and lots of information about weird stuff, UFOs, ghosts, and things that go bump in the night, and everything associated with them. Fascinating guests, fascinating talk, fascinating information.
Welcome back to the Paranormal Peep Show. We're talking to Philip Kinsella and Chris Mays about The Eternal Avatar. It's their latest book that they produced, covering all sorts of topics such as avatars. What is an avatar? Well, the avatar that I understand was the one from the film with the James Cameron film with the people flying the dinosaurs. But I know that avatar was probably taken from this thing called Second Life, which was a game going around in the mid 2000s or something, where people went onto the computer, they inhabited another life form. But you're saying the eternal avatar is actually inhabiting maybe human life forms and other life forms, and they become our avatars. Is that right?
Yes, I mean, avatar is in Hindu is for master soul incarnated into the flesh, rather like Christ. If we just touch upon that very sensitive subject, but Chris and I believe that we are all avatars. That it's not just a coming from heaven, a place that we're still trying to research and understand, but other dimensions of reality, other worlds. Because we look at the universe and it's absolutely incredible. What are we contained in if we are indeed in some? What is beyond that? And when people say, "Oh, I don't believe," well, I say to them, "Well, look up there. What is up there? Space." It's like, yeah, well, what's holding that together? Where's the glue that's binding that all together? It's incredible. So I think it's very naive as us as a current and very early species to assume that this is how it is. No, completely wrong.
Chris,
it's interesting. I was thinking about that the other day. Actually, I went to a nightclub in London, and I was just looking around at all the people. I just thought all of these people kind of essentially came from the size of a grain of sand. Smaller than the size of a grain. Everyone around me, you could just fit into kind of like a thimble in terms of a grain of sand. And I was thinking all of their consciousnesses are within themselves, and each person has got like an individual perspective of everything around them. And I was just thinking, where is them? Where is the essence of them? Is it just within the human body, or is it just kind of like absolutely everywhere, and it's just each person has a perspective just from within their human body? When you think about it, Philip, it's quite bizarre, isn't it? It's really quite bizarre. You've got this huge universe of nothingness. If you go out there's just kind of like there's just cold, dark nothingness. Whether there's other planets, which I personally believe there is, but that's another matter. Let's say for the moment it's just like a cold, empty universe, and then you come to this tiny little blue marble, and then it's just absolutely teeming with life. Like how is it even possible? Where's it come from?
Well, Chris will explain as well, but if you look at the universe like a mattress, the mattress has springs to hold that together, and dark matter does suggest that there is an alternative layer, that hidden power, hidden force that is holding and binding everything together. So, and even in quantum mechanics, quantum physics tells us that nothing is really separate; they're all connected. But Chris will explain a little bit about his.
It's good, Andy, because you mentioned about us all being like a speck, and then we becoming the human body, and where's the consciousness? Where's our spirit? How is it connected? And I think that's the thing. On a day-to-day level, you look at the body and think, where am I? What am I? Where is my consciousness? Where is my soul? Or whatever you want to call it. That's the thing with labels. One person would say a soul, a spirit, your divine self, higher self. And I think we are spirits having a physical experience. And I don't think all of us is here. I know it looks like and feels like we are. I don't think that all of our consciousness, all of our soul, all of our divinities is just separated and here. I think we're still linked to the God source, or whatever you want to call it, the all-knowing, all consciousness of intelligence. So I think we are like a thread connected to it, and we're just using this body to hook us into this reality, as it is often mentioned in a matrix or a simulation. And that's where it ties into my incarnation, and how I came in was that feeling that I was an energy, a being of light, and it was so interconnected. I was still myself, but still connected with everything and around me, and it was just a peaceful, happy, joyous place. But I wanted to learn. It was like an aching to know more about myself and who I was and what I was made of. And there was these voices, and as a child, when I was having these experiences or remembering, within the context, I just had no idea what I was going through. I couldn't explain it. And when I came at the end and I was crying because of the shock of it, I couldn't explain to my parents what I was seeing, what I was feeling, until I got older and I realized, and I pieced it together. And so, back to where I was, and I was in this place where I wanted to leave. I wanted to experience this life. And I could see the variations of my life, and the variations was how well I could remember who and what I was. and how much I could remember and stay true to myself with all the challenges that I would face. Because I think, excuse me, that's the problem with people, that they come across situations where you do lose your source, don't you? You lose yourself and you become the victim, and then you're disconnected. And that's the thing why I call evil. It's evil, that anything that separates us from our true self, our higher self, anything that does that is evil. And so but disconnecting yourself, you lose your power, and then some people, like, sadly commit suicide, or they don't see the reality of the situation. And so when I was leaving, there was these voices that were saying, are you sure? Are you happy? Are you committed? And I was like, no, sure, I'm certain I can be this person. I can be this who I want to be, and strive to be the best that I can be, remembering and challenging myself to see and know what I truly am made of. Because in this timeless place, nothing changes. It's timeless, so things can't change. But I had no polarity. There was no sense of knowing who I was. I knew who I was, but just indistinctly, I didn't know what I was made of, and I needed those challenges. And so I left. It was a flash. It was instant, and I just came into darkness. And I was out of that sense of connected light, being, energy. You know, I was just a consciousness, and I was being pushed and pulled at the same time. So I was being pulled to a destination while being pushed away from where I was, and all the while I was forgetting that memory of where I was. I was just forgetting, and it was becoming really ominous. And I realized that, oh, what have I done? And I could see these specks, and it got bigger, specks that were so small but just consumed me, realizing that I was becoming so small. While I was becoming ever so small, things that were small was now becoming bigger and consuming me. So I was passing through, it felt like what you could describe as realities, lights of ribbon, matter. I couldn't explain it, but I can see it now in my third eye. I can what I was going through. It was just like I was falling through matter, through substance, through time. It was like I was being consumed by it, and the sense of being made to feel so small, insignificant to everything else. But the only security I had was that I had somewhere to go. I had that sense of purpose, that there was something at the end of this path that was for me, and it was just going faster. And it was just the fear of having things being able to affect me. I realized that these things outside of me can affect me. That was new to me, because on the other side, that place doesn't. Things can't affect you that way, but this can. It can hurt you, affect. It just, yeah, it was scary. And then I saw this golden light, and I just came to it, and then bam, it was over. And that was that. It was just, and I just came out crying because I was waking up and not knowing where I was, and not feeling like this was home. This place wasn't where I came from, and all these questions were in my head. And as a young child of 4 or 5, it was just too much. But it was coming to me every night, every so often. It was coming to me, and it was being played out, and I was denying it. I was saying, no, I don't want to go through this again. I don't want to see it, because it was so traumatic. But it was like, no, you're going to see it. You're going to remember this. You're going through it. You have to know and remember this. And that's part of the story.
And also, you were trying, even at a young age, to get out of your body. You were trying to get out of it.
Yeah, when I was a baby, I was in a cot, and I could shake myself against the back on my back. I was knocking myself out of my body in a way. I could feel myself loosening out. I was coming out of my body, and I could escape my little body. and I was creating such a noise that I was making the cot jump up and down, and it was disturbing the neighbours. And neighbours were coming knocking on the door saying, what are you doing? Why are you doing DIY so late at night? And my dad was saying, what do you want me to do? Chain my child down to the car? Yeah, even when I was in the cot, I was getting out of the cot, dismantling it, destroying it, because I just didn't want to be in the cot. Yeah, everything was just I just didn't want to be where I was.
Did your twin brother have any kind of similar experiences to you, as you're both twins?
No, I can't say. He's had some paranormal experiences. He had loads of smoke coming out of his mouth. He thought he was on fire, and then he looked, and then suddenly it's gone. And he was alone in the house, so he quickly phoned his parents, and then we didn't know what to say. But no, he is sensitive, and I've picked up on him. He's had a black eye, and on that night I've had the sore eye, the watering, the pain. So I sensed it, and he had a soft drink one day, and I tasted it. So I texted him, and he said, "Yeah, that's what I'm drinking." And so many other things where he had a painful thumb, so did I. There's synchronicities and thoughts that we've matched up, and yeah, I definitely think there is a psychic link. One seems to be I seem to receive, he seems to be the sender.
Right. Now, it's interesting you mentioned about the smoke coming out. I was just going to say, it sounds a bit like physical mediumship, the smoke coming out of the mouth. I mean, it could be anything, but that's what
he was doing. he was doing something mundane in the kitchen, just tidying up, and then he just looked down and he saw this just coming out of his mouth. It was bizarre.
Oh.
Yeah. He thought he was on fire, literally, because it was so thick.
It's my
Oh, no,
video. Yeah. I was going to say, it's interesting you're talking about these experiences when you're 4 or 5 years old. This seems to be quite a consistent thing. I don't know if you've seen the show Ghost Inside My Child, but that's quite fascinating. And there's a lot of kids who also say the same thing. It's like they don't feel that this planet is home and they want to go home. And they talk about wanting to go home. And I've also kind of like felt that growing up as well. I've never really kind of fitted in with this Earth society or this Earth planet. I've always felt that even growing up, because I was growing up in a Church of England school, and obviously it's very kind of like church based and Christian based, which is fine. But as I was growing up, I kind of thought this doesn't really resonate with me. Like, why am I being told all these stories and parables from the past that don't really kind of mean anything in this current life? And I had a lot of questions, and growing up in the school that I grew up in, you weren't really allowed to ask questions. It's kind of, this is how it is, just accept it kind of thing. And I think people like us, we're kind of out of the normal box, so to speak, and we begin to think, and we begin to kind of like question things more. And then, as Philip was alluding to earlier, that if you do that, if you stick your head above the parapet, then you're going to start getting shots of the establishment and the regime.
Yeah, well, they can throw what they want at us, because theory work, and also basing our assumptions upon models, not just those that have already been studied, but creating some kind of new link or theories attaching to the suggestion that we are much more than flesh and blood. And this is interesting, because my question is why? Why are they doing what they're doing? And that's what we're looking at the moment. But certainly through Chris's experience is incredible. And I understand those feelings I remembered as a kid. I think I put this in one of my other books, that if I got a pin and I pricked it on my tongue, not that I did it very often, there was a sensation I used to experience at night where it was like that feeling of a mass, of an energy that was so much more powerful than I was, that could crush you. And that even when I was perhaps 10 or 11, I remembered, I called it Mr. Matter. I have written about this. I used to call the energy Mr. Matter, even then as a kid, because this energy was very strong and very powerful, and I couldn't kind of understand what this was. But certainly the other side is more real than here. And when you do cross over, I mean, I had the experience in South Africa when I drowned, and I had the experience. It is incredible. It's a feeling of, well, I am home. This is home. And also the shock. It's not just, although you explain it in words, the feelings attached with them, like Chris's examples of him coming into the incarnation, when you remember those feelings of the recall of that, it's shocking, because that's more real than being here. Here, it felt like we're asleep. We're not really awake. And yet over there, it was more real than here. And of course, unfortunately, being a psychic, you are then prone to many other aspects of these recalls, or that I call recalls, so many of them. But they all, when you get them, there is a connection. There's definitely a connection to be made. And I think, and I agree with Chris, that we're never really truly apart from our real sovereignty. I think there is a connection that we can make between one embodied to the other, rather like the avatar, as it were. Because, we're here temporarily in human form. And of course, consciousness will depart this realm and return back to wherever it originally came from. But some kind of embodiment, perhaps, even if it's light, is suggestive of that. So the avatar as well, within the film, it's interesting, we humans were wanting to put their consciousness into an alien life form so they can adapt within the environment. So it's very much the same thought that we have on a higher level of spiritual reality, as they call it.
So there's 2 points I'll mention for it, and one is earlier in the book, he talking about your granddad Kinsella, who you went to the other side. I can't remember how you went there, through a dream or an astral projection or something. and he was in
Yeah.
a windmill, wasn't he?
Yes, that's right. And you'll find that these experiences never leave you because they have such a profound effect
Yeah.
upon your consciousness. So we were in Brown's Close, and I awoke. I can't remember if it was a Saturday or Sunday morning. Then I found myself floating up out of my body into the sky, and I came towards this beautiful city. It was the most amazing modern city I've ever seen in my entire life. There were lights on. There was no one around. There was a peace or a quiet that I can't explain. Then I went up, or it felt like I was going up. And then I was in this land with a blue sky with poppies, loads of poppies, no sun. And we did talk about that, Neil, before, without sun, no sun. And I saw this windmill. And as soon as I thought of going towards the windmill, I was there, and I opened up the door, and it was my step grandfather from the paternal side, and James Patrick Kinsella, and he was healthy, and he was there, and he said, in his Irish accent, "Lovely to see you, son," and he grabbed me. And when I went into this room, there were these pictures of his horses, because he loved horses, and he wanted me and my brother to be jockeys. We're too tall for that. But there was a lady sitting in the corner of the table. Her hair was designed differently, and she was sipping some tea. And I didn't know who she was, because the grandmother that I knew, I never really, we did meet her, but she had a stroke and was in a vegetative state for about 11 to 30, I think it was about 13 years, paralyzed. She couldn't talk. And when we'd see her, she would just look vacantly in our eyes. So my grandfather was happy and told me that he'd always be there for me. And we gave another hug, and then I was back in the field with poppies, and I came down towards the city, and I woke up. Now, I can't remember how long it was, but I went over my stepfather's at one point, and he showed us some film, silent film, projected on a wall. And there was my grandfather dancing with a lady, and I said, "Oh my goodness, I've seen her. Who's that?" And he said, "That's your grandmother."
Mm-hmm.
Now, the windmill was that when Ronnie and I were very young, we lived on the property of Bignell House, and our stepfather had made this mechanical windmill. And I remembered looking at it, and our grandfather came to stay with us at the cottage on the grounds of the mansion, and he was very pleased with the work that his son had done. And I was fascinated by this windmill. So I think my grandfather had used that as a ruse to get me there, to show me the windmill so that I could work it out, so I would know that I had and been to see him. But I don't know what the city was in between that state. That was quite fascinating. So yes, that was the event.
It struck me when I read that, and I know you told me the story in person, and it was nice to reread it in the book. But
Yes.
what jumped out at me was the poppies. I know it seems kind of like a minor detail, but to me, that meant quite a lot. The reason being that is when my own grandfather, my Welsh grandfather, was dying in hospital, one of the last things he was said to have said, because I wasn't there, he said, "I can see poppies. I can see poppies." And my mum wondered if it was something to do with, the fields of France, where he was maybe in the battles there or something in the war. And then shortly afterwards, he died. So I kept thinking, but that poppies, it could be significant to do with the other side. And you said there was something symbolic about it. I can't remember
There
what
is.
you said. What
It
was the
was
symbolism?
The eternity, because the poppies signify eternity, or immortality, or this. It's one of those definitions, because I wanted to find out why I was in the field of poppies. What did they mean? And of course, when you, like Chris and Andy, like you, Neil, when you're involved in this, you'll find the spirit bring things in a way that we have to translate that language, the unspoken language, through signs and symbology. So that's why I had a look at that. Yeah.
Yeah. And then, so you talked about previous lives that you had in the book, where I think one of them, you was this kind of a servant to a high up guy in India.
That's correct.
Working in the Taj Mahal, you thought. Yes. And then eventually in that life you died. Now, how did you get that memory come through? Was that under hypnosis or anything?
No, that's always been with me. And I was seeing myself as a poor boy in a white tunic, watching and seeing elephants bringing tree barks and all sorts across what I now know to be the river Ganges. And of course, I remembered my home. It was just a simple dwelling, white wall, dirty, and my room was just a hard bed. Then I found myself working for a master. He fed me and clothed me. And I remembered going to this part where there was an outside gated area with steps going into water. And there was an Indian man with a turban who was a friend, a worker. And we used to bathe and talk. And so I remembered that very clearly. Now, when I was at school and going through pictures of the Taj Mahal, you have the famous part with the lotus pond, which is always seen. But there was a part that I remembered that was a side gate, and I found it in a book, and I couldn't believe it. So that was one memory, and did not come through any form of regression or hypnosis. They were quite depressing incarnations, to be honest with you. One was me being a tramp up north somewhere, the smell of kind of like material in the air. I don't know how to explain it. Smoke, fog, lights. I was in an old bus shelter that was worn out, and that was my home, and I liked reading books, and a lady from the hill would come down with her 2 children and give me food and water. Mostly depressing incarnations. And we decided to come down here. We must have been drunk.
You think you've done better on this one, though, haven't you?
I think we,
Because on this particular lifetime, you're starting to wake up and starting to smell the coffee, as they say, and you're starting to work out that they're previous lifetimes, and you're an eternal avatar, and so all these kind of experiences, like Chris's, like Andy's, like mine, are starting to sort of accumulate, and something's rising to the surface of all these lifetimes through the sediment of our consciousness to the very top, and things are bubbling over, and we're starting to put our head above the parapet or above the surface of consciousness water as such, and seeing what's out there, up periscope sort of thing. So with all these lifetimes, I mean, do you give kind of any indication of how many lifetimes one has to have before they're kind of ascended into a new level?
Well, with past lives, I think when we're here, we remember the times we've been on Earth much easier, because I believe that we have other lives in other realities and other worlds as well. It just happens that while we're here, we seem to remember the other lives that we've lived. Because I have memories, but they're like snapshots. They're short scenes of being in a war, drowning off a ship, and being in a castle, and those sort of things. I have them because they feel like really personal. They're visceral, so it's more than just a whimsical imagination. It's something real. It feels vivid. That's why I don't fear water, but I have a disliking to water. But I think that's where, again, with proof that we have signs on our bodies as well there, where things have happened in our past. People carry through past injuries, don't they? It's been recorded, and they have a memory of being shot, and there's a wound site, and these things seem to show proof that it is possible that we do live other lives. And I'm a believer. I do think we do. I think one life isn't enough.
Yeah. Have you heard is it?
Something I've wondered about this is in the spiritual community, when people have bad lives, so to speak, or kind of depressing lives that Philip was talking about, we're often told, it's to learn lessons. It's to learn lessons. But what I would say is, well, what are the lessons to learn? Okay, it's a crap life. Where does it go beyond that? Okay, I've learned the lesson. It's a crap life. I don't need an entire life to realise that living in a bus shelter, in the cold and damp is a crappy life. Where does it go beyond the lessons?
Well, I think on the eternal part, we are talking about us being immortal, and I believe that what happens is that it is incidental when we pass over, although it means everything to us here now, and we suffer in silence most of the time. We wrestle with so much that it seems to be a problem or issue here on the planet Earth. And when we released, that is the true liberation. That is the feeling of like complete and total eternity, because over there is more real. I can assure you of that.
I remember reading in the Seth books, and you got some of these Seth books as well, Philip. Seth Speaks, and he talks about his past lives. So Seth was this kind of spirit guide of Jane Roberts, the writer, and she used to channel him on a weekly basis, and he would dictate books for those that didn't know. But he talked about his past lives, and now he was kind of an advanced guide, I suppose. But he said that in one of his lives, he was a pope, a minor pope in the 8th century or something, unlisted because they weren't very good at keeping records back then. And he said he fathered 2 illegitimate children. And he said, even in that memory, he said, how can I be a pope? Why does God favor me as a pope? And here I am being such a naughty man sort of thing, And And the other one, he said that in another life, he said he was a mother of like 10 kids or something, and they had no home. He said they used to sleep rough in doorways, and he said it was always an amazing thing that when they woke up in the morning after sleeping rough, that none of them had died in the night, that they'd all still be alive the next day. And so that was a real rough, hard, tough life. He went from a high pope down to this woman who had 8 kids or 10 kids, living a real rough life. So I think it's which way the needle's going to swing. You have too much of this, then you've got to come back to some of that. And you've got to strike a balance, I suppose. You have to know the rough from the smooth. And eventually, the idea is that you'd ascend on to something like Seth became, I suppose, this superb high spirit guide or whatever. And even beyond that, he goes on to something else, I suppose. But wherever we go beyond that is the ultimate destination that we don't really know, I suppose.
Well, I think a lot of things have been altered on this world. I think it wasn't meant to go the way it was meant to. I think we as the human going into the process of our own spiritual evolution, it's been hijacked. It's been, trampled down. And of course, this is why we've got so many problems on this planet at the moment on a physical level, material level. And this is why I think maybe a lot of the journeys that we tend to decide to go into are not quite how we always planned out. The majority of them, I think I do, believe they do, but not all of them I don't.
Philip, I think you're absolutely right, and I think I've come to the conclusion we're at war. I think the operative word is hijacked, but the question is what has hijacked it, and here's the real kind of the crux of it. Is it a case that some demonic entity or dark entity has come along on its own and hijacked us, or did we manifest and create it? I don't know. Is there something kind of like dodgy going on with the human psyche, or whatever created us, created like a dark side within us? Did we then create dark societies, secret societies, and then try and call forth demonic forces? And whatever demonic forces were in the universe decided, oh, okay, they're calling us now. We've now got a karmic permission to go and link up with the humans down there. What do you think is going on?
You're on a point there, Andy, and it's big, because I think you're right. This world is something that we manifest, and it's either, are we manifesting everything or nothing? I think it's either one or the other, either singularly or collectively. And I've heard and seen a lot of information coming through that's saying that even with demons, we manifest them. It's within our realm of believability. Everything within this world has come forth through our minds, hasn't it? Everything that we see, feel, touch has come from us.
Yeah.
So that's and it's a hard thing to swallow. Like you say, why do we have to have these nasty experiences, not just us, but seeing them around the world? We can see them. We have to disassociate to a degree, recognize it. And again, from what I've seen, and it's hard to take on, I don't mean to seem flippant, because this is a big topic that you can't mention in 5 minutes, is that when you do have something happen, it's only negative or positive upon how you see and react to it. And I know that sounds hard. If that you're in real big trouble, you're not going to say that this is a good thing, this is positive. But in a way, that's the way we probably have to go about this, is to make every event looks negative, but make it positive. See it as something we can grow from, learn from, change, adapt, become better. And it's a trick. It's hard. And I don't mean to sound like it's an easy thing. When you see war-torn countries and children dying, this is a sore topic, a sensitive one. But if we're talking about this in a spiritual way and manifesting, we have to look at it maybe in that respect, but within our own world, because we can't change the world. We're not meant to. Only ourselves. We have to represent what we want the world to be. So this is what we have to do, is to have things that come along that's negative, but it's like, okay, I could take this as negative. I could be the victim. I could say this is going to limit me, or I can either, this is a push. This is for me to change my path. This is for me to look elsewhere, or you see what I'm saying? So it's purely a mindset, but there is more to explain on this topic. But
and also, and also, I'll just have to say here, people say, I want proof of the supernatural. I want proof. And every time you bring something to the table, it eludes our sense of reality. Look, we are going through an individual experience. We incarnate through the womb, through our mother, and then we have that one single unique experience to you. And of course, you then see the world and shape it how you view it, how you believe it. It's the same within ufology. The big question about why you have these certain areas, these nests, these portals, these areas of high strangeness. And we've argued, well, maybe it's you've activated it. You're bringing that to you, and it's shaping within the way that you view that, or how that's been programmed within your mindset. So we're looking at things on a very unique individual level, whereas most people are trying to force it into the same box that everyone is having the same thing. It's not. Life is unique and universal, but also to you, that you are going through this journey on your own. We have people with us, we have souls with us, but at the end of the day, you're translating it the way that you're viewing it. It's lovely when you get other souls, like when Chris came into my life and it started to, we shared all of our information and the way we saw things, how we see things together. Like, you, Neil and Andy, we see things on that same level and other people won't. So that reality is their reality and this is our reality. And this is why we believe that people saying about the essential, well, it may not happen quite that way, but certainly with the vibrational energy systems, fluctuating from negative to positive, they have that choice, but we are evolving, we're lifting upwards, if you see what I mean. So
and Bashar was talking about that as well. Are you aware of kind of Bashar and Darryl Anka? So his perspective is that each individual person, if you like, is having infinite versions of themselves playing out in infinite realities. So somewhere along the lines, there'll be a version of me that's not in clown world, that is in a wonderful, loving world. It's brilliant and wonderful and fantastic. But he also says something that's really kind of screws with your mind. He says, there's only one person in the room. And when you think of that, it melts your mind. And what he means by that is there's only one soul that has fragmented itself infinite amount of times. So all of us really are. I'm talking to myself when I'm talking to you, and you're talking to yourselves when you're talking to me. There is only just me. But it's the me from every infinite perspectives.
Yeah, and with past lives, so you're also talking in a life that you're going to live again. You're talking to yourself, your own self. Yeah, I mean, it's amazing. But it's good to remember that what we see in our world is what you're wired to expect to see. It's your brain. They know that. They know that if something's outside of your expectation and reality, you won't see it. Even if it's in your face, almost. It's like we have a bad filtering system. It works on overdrive. Our experiences help to develop and change our consciousness to see more, where before we wouldn't. So that's why experiences are paramount. It helps us to see more, to develop more, and change the reality that we're in.
And going on from that, this is where it gets really quite bizarre. I watched so there's quite a few podcasts that I watch of other people as well, and there was one guy who, funnily enough, mentioned the Kinsellas. He's aware of you, and he met you and Ronnie at a conference somewhere with other ufologists, and what he was saying is that he was calling the if we like to call it the woo-woo, the strange, the paranormal, he was calling it the phenomena. And he was basically saying that this force, this phenomena, manifests itself almost according to what we're expecting to see and believe in. So in other words, if you were a ghost hunter and you went to a haunted location, this phenomena would kind of like show itself as a ghost or a spirit. And if you were to go to like a field and you're UFO watching, then this phenomena would kind of represent itself as a UFO or even an alien, if you're lucky. But the weird thing is, he was basically saying this is all connected, and it's not disparate kind of like separate factions. It's actually all the same thing manifesting itself, almost like code running in a program according to what the believer and the seer almost wants to see. So even to the extent, I'm kind of like expanding from what he said, but for instance, if somebody was really into kind of Bigfoot or really into vampires or werewolves,
into their reality.
Yeah, at some point in their lives, they might start seeing an actual werewolf or Bigfoot or vampire. But it's actually, if you think about it if you think about the universe as like a matrix full of code, and even the Oracle in the Matrix talked about this, everything that you see around you is kind of code, and when you get programs hacking programs, it's basically werewolves and vampires and ghosts. They're all part of the same thing. And is it that there's a viewer viewing something that's out there that already exists, or is the viewer bringing to the table their own belief system and what they expect to see, and the universe mirrors it back at you in the form that you're expecting to see?
Who is the puppeteer?
Yes.
And at the end of the day, the question is, we've been asking about cryptids with aliens. The human seems to be so far removed from all other elements of the paranormal. And where are they all? We've argued this before. We're all hanging out. And of course, they all seem to adopt the same process of communication through telepathy. And we as the human are, I suppose I would say distinct in nature, but we harbor our own thoughts. We don't know what the other person's thinking or feeling. So I agree with you. Is there an ultimate force, rather like Stephen King's It? I have thought about this, that projects itself into the mind self, the person that's fears. If you fear things, you're going to draw that fear towards you. So it's interesting. I think we have to be very open to all forms of speculation.
Okay, so if we were to take the assumption maybe that these phenomenon that were going on were separate, let's imagine that they're separate. You probably found, Philip, that people who delve into things like UFOs and aliens, if they go down that path and do actually start seeing things, they then almost start seeing kind of poltergeist things and spirit apparitions from, quote, the dead as well. And vice versa. So people who start off with kind of ghost hunts and spirits and apparitions and that kind of thing, sometimes and very often end up seeing UFOs and aliens and kind of, let's just call it kind of cryptid or esoteric beings, whether you want to call them demons, angels, spirit guides, whatever, as well. It's almost like when people open a portal, let's just call it a portal for the paranormal and some kind of phenomena to happen, other factions kind of ram their crowbar in and say, we want a piece of the action. Have you noticed that?
Oh, yes, absolutely. And of course, many long years ago, when I was getting a little bit heavy with the UFO subject, when I pulled away from it, it was like a weight had lifted from my shoulders. It literally as if I could breathe again for a short while. But of course, I was pulled back into it like a moth to a flame. So I do believe that, I did consider, first of all, there was a convergence within timelines, whether or not the viewing of UFO that came into our matrix would open these or allow these other dimensions to seep through into our reality as like some kind of residue. That was my first thought. But now thinking about it, it is apparent that the individual is the receptor, that what you start to believe in, you will shape that into your reality. It will become prominent within your realm. If you leave it, it will dissipate. And that is very much true, like a magician. And we've got to understand that the mind is the omnipresent power, our connection to all that is. So, we are facilitating these interests into our consciousness. We can close one area and open another one. And this is interesting. I think I call it the eternal time corridor, where we're allowing our consciousness to fix with anything that we want to bring in or separate. The thing is, it's the same with manifestation programs. If you look at them, you can bring things into your life through manifestation, and you have to have a very positive, framework when you're doing it, believing it and existing in it as though you have it already. But what I found was that when I was younger, a lot younger, when I was about 30 odd, I'd be as happy as a clam and walking down the high street going to work thinking it's going to be a fantastic day. I'm just so positive. And I found then all the negativity that you could put on the table was then presented into my day. And at the end, I was like, "Do you know what? Forget this. I'm leaving it. I'm just going to be normal within my thinking." And it was like, oh, yes, there we are. So I wonder whether or not there's some irony with this intelligence that knows that, oh, there are certain people that's lifting themselves out of that normal conditioned program, conscious awareness, and we need to go and check them out. So this may answer some extraordinary questions about this force, this omnipresent energy that is interested in those of us who are operating outside the normal, our normal conscious, centralized programming. The Greys, for instance, I have mentioned this in some work, that then are sent in and go and check you out. Like, why are you different? What is different about you? And this, of course, we're not going to go down that road, because that opens up a whole can of other areas that, you'll just end up getting lost. So we tried to centralize our main theme with this book as the eternal avatar, and looking at your inherent greatness and how to separate away from the huge influx of negativity and the centralized programming. The interesting thing is, what we're looking into now is why and what is doing this. What is it that's behind all of this? Not just the puppets that are given all the power and the money and the gongs and are only here for a short period of time. What is behind this? What are their intentions? And of course, this is why, just to finish off here, this is why I believe that the system has deliberately thwarted any attempts to find out the true age of the Homo sapien and the model of the human, and why that they've covered all of our past, the origins, our actual origins of where we really come from. I think that might answer some extraordinary, question. That may tell us a lot more about what we really represent as the human, which is a magnificent and connected to the Godhead.
And the possible scary answer to that is, I mean, you've probably seen the Bourne Identity and kind of all the Bourne movies, and right at the very, very, very end, and Jason Bourne is asking, well, why is this happening? Who did this? Who put me on this program? Why am I here? And what it comes down to is, he did. So in the paranormal sense, who's the puppeteer? Who's creating all this clown world, this insanity, this chaos, this destruction, this manic, just stupid, woke lunacy that's going on? Is it us? Are we creating for ourselves almost like an opposite version of what the universe should be, in order to show us how not to do things, to therefore create for ourselves what we do want in our life?
Yes, Chris.
No, you're right. Yeah, and
Let's answer that then. Fine.
Yeah, you touched on it really. Yeah, in order to know what we want, we need to know what we don't want, and usually that's what happens in life: is we get things we don't want. That helps us to decide what we do, and then we take that path towards it. Yeah, true.
Yeah, and we're also
sorry, carry on.
We're creating memories as well. I think it's interesting to consider the fact that in this life, we're never in the moment, we're never in the future or the past, because we never reach it. We are generating memories, and one wonders whether or not those memories are being used as a platform for other experiences beyond this dimension of awareness. It's rather like someone making a film, and then you're seeing the whole production, all of the problems, all the arguments, all the difficulties, and then you're in it. You're watching the film as it just flows through nicely. So Chris and I have considered also that the wonderful mosaic tapestry of this creation of life is something that we are generating, we're creating for not just ourselves, for when we pass over, but for other intelligences, other souls to experience as well. Because if you have nothing, then there is literally nothing. So are we creating a tapestry, a film, a new world beyond this one? That this is just basically where we're directing, we're producing, we're writing, and then we can actually go in it when we leave here. It's another possibility to consider.
It's exactly that. It's kind of like I think Shakespeare said it's like the whole world is a play, but we're everything. We're the director, the producer, the actors, and we're the audience.
Yes.
Philip, do you believe that there are some there are some films that really put your heckles up when you view them, like The Matrix. For me, I was just kind of
Oh,
like,
yes.
oh my god. Another one was The Adjustment Bureau.
Yeah.
Do you think there is some kind of adjustment bureau for when people like me and you and Chris and Neil start creating little shows like this, that we're flagged up somewhere? And as you say, the little greys come along and they kind of probe and seeing what we're about. But is there some other kind of like intelligence force or some force out there that's, if we get a little bit too close to the truth, wants to kind of come in and veer us a little bit away, more back into the clown world or the sheep world?
Chris?
I think there is technology where if you are tapping onto things that are waking people up, you might have technological problems like IT problems. I think that's possible, where they can access things outside away from you and you think, oh, this is just a natural problem. Yeah, I do. I think there are ways and means to change people and misdirect them into stopping them. But I've seen the Bureau, that film, and it is a good one because it does make you think.
It's even got the Hat Man, hasn't it?
Yeah.
They kind of like
Yeah.
they go through the portals with their hats.
Exactly. Yeah. So you mean?
So I was going to say, Chris or Philip, either of you, have you had instances where you thought this is so crazy, it's almost like the Truman Show, almost like it's set up?
There are moments where that are bizarre, and you think you have to look around and think, well, what was that? Am I on test here? Am I on a show? Yeah, there is. There are moments in my life. I do think and recall a few of those. And yeah, I mean, these are all questions about our reality, isn't it? And are we being tested? And is this real? It's so hard to answer that one. And who is in control of it? And are we monitored? I think that's where silence. Free speech is being pushed. That is their way on a collective scale, on a global scale.
Yeah, so mine was definitely.
Go on, Philip.
Yeah,
first of all, yeah.
Mine was the viewing of the UFOs, the last on the 9th of April 2016. There they were, like the summoning of the UFO on the 8th of June 1998 at Rendlesham. The craft, the objects were over our grandmother, and then of course the abduction. So yes, sure, I stood back and I thought, well, this is incredible because there it is. The system is telling you it doesn't exist. Either I'm lying or the system's lying. And it's like, it did feel like the Truman Show when you're touched by the singularity and it's there in full view of you, not just seeing people after they've died. And you're thinking to yourself, well, I must be going stark raving mad. But thankfully we're grounded and, and very to the point. So yes, in answer to your question, Andy, it did feel a little bit like the Truman Show, like, wow, what is going on? And I think this is the actual whole thing that pulls you in because you want to find the truth. Once you're touched by it, you can't let go. You've got to find it. You've got to go in deeper and deeper, like down the rabbit hole, so to speak.
What I will say about you going back a few moments ago, you talked about trying to think positively, Philip, and you're going down the street on the way to work thinking, right, I'm going to attract all the good things to me. It so reminded me of, I don't know when it was done, but it was an experiment done on the power of prayer. And it was done by, I think it was backed actually by a Christian organization that initiated this because they wanted to actually see, does the power of Christian prayer work in healing? And they did it at this Christian kind of financed hospital, I think in America. And they took 3 different sets of people, groups, and they said, okay, to one group, we're going to pray for you in the name of Jesus. And then the next group, they said, we're not going to pray for you at all. And they were told about it. In the next group, they were just not going to be told anything. They weren't even going to be prayed for. They were just going to be left to see if they would heal or whatever. And the ones that knew they were being prayed for by the Christian doctors or nuns or whoever was doing the prayer work, they were the ones that got iller, and they took ages to recover from their operations. And the ones that weren't prayed for at all, who knew nothing about it, were the ones that recovered really well and got out of hospital quicker, which is a bit of an irony. So the ones that are expecting good results from the power of prayer actually suffered the worst, which is kind of an irony.
What do you think's going on there?
It's the mind. It's the mind. The power of the mind is the omnipresent force of everything, and belief structures our reality. That is what's happening, so I believe that.
And then you're saying the ones that were prayed for did worse.
That's right. Yeah. Chris, you was going to say something.
Well, you don't know collectively how they were perceiving or receiving that healing. Are they people that are open-minded to healing, or did they just think healing's rubbish, so they negatively thought that it wasn't going to make a difference, and they thought negatively about it? It's hard to say they engage what the underlying issues were with that one, but it is a mindset. It definitely is, because there was a story about 2 boats landing on shore from a shipwreck. One had a captain that was really positive, one negative, and all the souls on one ship were nearly close to death because there was no hope for them. But the positive one, they all got help themselves onto the beach, and it's just purely mindset and optimism and hope.
And this is why the system is so intent at disabling us, to stop us from understanding our greatness, because they burned witches or drowned them because they were using their minds outside the box. It was a testament from the system to say, don't you dare do that. So we are very powerful as eternal avatars. We are absolutely, totally, we are creators, but the system wants to push us down and say no. But the question is, what is the system, or those that's really operating behind the scenes, what is it they get from us? They obviously need the human for something, and there are many suggestions towards that, but we are highlighting the ways of breaking away from that, of being positive, of understanding your brilliance and your creative power as a co-creator to the one. So this book also gives people hope, and we also explore those questions that we're all looking for. Doesn't mean to say we've got the answers. They are, after all, theories, but theories are better than nothing.
Neil, just quickly, there's a counter actually to whatever study that was. One of them's anecdotal, one of them's recorded. The recorded one, I think it might have been on Strange But True. There was a young lad who basically had cancer of some kind, and basically he kept doing a daily meditation of imagining space invaders, and he imagined that he was the spaceship and kind of like going at the top, kind of like shooting up bullets, and that the aliens were at the top represented the cancer. And he kept doing this visualization, and as you know, with space invaders, like the more the bullets go up, the more kind of like the aliens and the creatures disappear until there's nothing there. He kept doing that meditation, and eventually he said that there's no more aliens there, and he went into the doctors and the cancer was disappeared. So that was kind of, I think that might have been on Strange But True, but it's certainly documented. And then anecdotally, my mum goes to church. She's a Christian in the local area. The vicar, this is quite a few years ago, the vicar was diagnosed with a brain tumour, and I think he was given like a month to live, 6 months to live, whatever it was, but not long. The whole congregation prayed for him and prayed for him and prayed for him. I think he survived about 10 to 15 years afterwards, and I believe that the cancer actually disappeared or kind of went into remission, and then however he passed was kind of like natural causes after that. I don't think it was the cancer that took him, but the fact of the matter is lots of people prayed for him, and he way outlived the prognosis of how long he was supposed to live. So that I know it's anecdotal, but that's
no. I mean, again, I've got anecdotal stories where it goes back again the other way, because I used to go to these Christian groups. Not that I have to point out that I wanted to become a Christian, but I just loved to go there for the debates. And when I lived in the Bedford area, I went to this King's Church place, and they did a kind of Christian course or something. And of course, I knew my Bible a bit, even though I wasn't a Christian, and I used to challenge them on stuff like that. It was almost like a kind of theological sparring with people. And I mean, I was actually asked to leave one group because I was like converting people against Christianity with my arguments, which I consider that a badge of honor. I did hear.
I was invited to just quickly. I was invited to a student union, Christian student union. Funnily enough, at a local hospital, because my friend was working there as a pharmacist, and he brought up. It's not for me to go along and kind of like try and convert people, but if somebody asks a question, I'll try and answer it. And he said, "Does anyone want to ask any questions?" And I think about the Bible. And my question was, if incest is a sin, which I highly would not recommend incest, but if incest is a sin, where did we come from? Because if Adam and Eve were the first humans and they had sons and daughters, the only way the human race could have expanded is if those sons and daughters procreated. They didn't like that question, and it kind of moved on from there.
Yeah, it does get troublesome.
It does.
It's what was the question I asked? Oh yeah, no, they were saying about someone that they prayed for, and they said about this child that was dying from the local church, and like you say, the whole congregation prayed for him. Like 200 people prayed for this child, and he died, unfortunately. And so they came to the conclusion that God had called him home. Now, maybe that was the case. God had called him home, but it kind of went, it's like, well, either you pray and you get better, or you pray and you don't get better. And I know people that have had cancers and tumors and things like that. No one prayed for them, but they still lived for maybe another 5 or 6 years after their diagnosis. So it seems to me that prayer could either work or it doesn't, or I don't know. I mean,
Depends whether or not it's your time. It depends whether or not, we're all going to go out. All of us are going to die. That is the truth of the matter. And who knows? I mean, we can't state categorically why these things happen, but we do know there is another side. There are alternative dimensions of reality beyond this physical realm. So, people will bring up all sorts of assumptions about why this happened or why this happened. At the end of the day, it happened. But the truth of the matter is that there is so much more beyond the material realm. Let's put it that way.
Just to add to that, Neil, it almost brings up the question, is there any point in praying? Like, for instance, whose priority is more? Our priority in wanting the person to live, or God's priority wanting them back? So if we're praying for them to live and God says, well, actually, no, I'm going to take them back, well, then God takes priority, right? So what's the point of praying? Because it's always going to be about what God wants.
Yeah. And the trouble is, we're viewing God in human terms, that God has a want or a need.
That's right.
Surely he shouldn't, that's the way we're viewing it. We're viewing, unfortunately, we're still kind of colored a little bit by that Christian lens of ideas. Even if we're not Christians, we're still thinking in a lot of those terms without realizing it. So that's the problem.
I think the one book that kind of shook that quite a lot, and I agree with probably 99% of it, maybe not all of it, but Conversations with God by Neil Donald Walsh.
Oh yeah,
really takes the kind of like the concept of the Christian, Judeo-Christian God, and shakes it around and says, actually, maybe it's not quite that. And the crux of it is basically, God is not so much a he or a she, a man on a throne with a big white beard. It's more of a consciousness. It's
right.
the everything.
An energy.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
And it should be accessed by everyone, shouldn't it? Everyone should have access to that. If you think that God's outside of you, then you're disconnected from your divinity, haven't you? Because if you think God is separate and he's the one with the answers and you're reaching out to him, then what are you? You're just some satellite spirit, disconnected, roaming around this earthly plane. And when we say free will, we either say we have free will or we don't. If we choose to come here, are we saying that God decides then when he wants us gone, or are we on our spiritual side saying, no, I've had enough of this, and then we go? I think maybe we are saying to ourselves when we go. And also I think we have a partnership and agreement where people can influence and heal. I am a big believer in healing. So, I mean, yes. I do think we have, but there's a thing with healing about, there's a grace, there's a side to it that's of grace, where if you want to heal someone, you have to ask them, would you accept healing? I think you have to ask them. You can give them absent healing if you wanted to make them feel better, let their passing be of less pain, that sort of thing. And I think that's the key, is just to, you can influence them to a point, but it's still their priority, their permission.
And you're a magnificent healer as well, Chris.
Thank you.
Brilliant. Yeah.
But it's like the thing about doing healing on animals. Animals have no concept of God, prayers, grace, or anything, and yet you could get a spiritual healer that appears to make a dog or a cat better from whatever ailment they've got. And
healing is a frequency, isn't it? You're giving healing. Yeah, you are giving the energy, but when you're happy and you're well, you have a frequency of wellness. Whereas someone's ill, there's there's energy dismantled, so it's separated. It's not right. And I think the healer is just literally aligning that that physical being into a spiritual wellness frequency of healthiness. I think you're just playing with the energy, the frequency. I don't think you're doing the healing. You're just bringing that frequency up for them to match it.
Yes. Yeah, it's almost a form of mediumship.
Yeah.
Oh, go on, Andy.
I do yeah, exactly that. I think also mindset is really, really important. And also, apparently in the olden days for healing, certainly kind of Victorian, early Edwardian days, they used to have solariums to get people better. So they'd have kind of like covered glass areas where they'd have patients in beds to get in vitamin D and light. Apparently they used to heal quicker. And also they've experimented, and this is quite a kind of mainstream thing now. They've got kind of, what do they call it? Comfort animals or comfort dogs. Well, they've got a dog that comes into kind of convalescent homes or hospitals, and you can pet the dog and stroke the dog.
Yes.
And at first they thought, oh, well, this is a hygiene issue. We can't have dogs and cats and bunny rabbits in hospitals with patients. But they've actually found that the patients get better quicker, because what do you do when you see a big sloppy dog giving you a piss? You feel good. And I think actually I'm right in saying that they've even experimented with either bringing in comedians or having comedy channels on that also boosts the patient recovery time. Because in hospital, how do you feel? You feel, oh God, everything smells of antiseptic, and it's kind of, it's got a real negative energy. But if you bring in comedy, you bring in humor, you bring in animals, you're feeling uplifted and you're feeling wow. And that apparently does
because what they're doing is they're making you forget yourself. That's what they do.
Yeah, that's just remind me of the irony. Once I had to take someone to A&E some years ago, and we're all waiting in the A&E, and they got a TV screen there for the public to watch it whilst they're going to get called by a nurse or a doctor or something. And what was playing on the TV? Casualty. So everyone's sort of seeing everyone's going in ambulances on the program. It's just reinforcing the negative thing about it. Crazy. Anyway, I think we have to draw this meeting to a close, gentlemen. It's been a very fascinating chat. So after the Eternal Avatar, is there any other plans to come through with another book at some point?
Yes, I dare say. I mean, I did kind of like suggest to Chris about the book, and it came out. I am working on 2 projects at the moment. So, books take a while, as you know, Neil, to write. And of course, so yes, who knows?
Great. And Chris, what plans do you have to do?
Yeah, I mean, writing the book with Philip was such a privilege and a joy, and wasn't expected. But now that's passed, I think I'm going to continue looking for some between jobs. So I'm working on my art still, because I like to do my own art and get commissioned for that, and so that's good. But so we'll see what happens. All excited.
Oh, well, that's great. And I haven't really mentioned much of Chris's art, but Chris is also a fantastic artwork. And so, Chris, if people want to see your artwork, you have your website, don't you?
I do. It's chrismays.uk. That's all it is. Plain and simple. Yeah.
And you paint, I've seen some of the pictures, you paint in acrylics with
it's anything.
wildlife and all sorts of underwater scenes of turtles and things like that. It's amazing stuff.
Airbrushing, watercolors, oils, acrylics, charcoal, anything. Yeah, just on all topics, landscape, portraits, anything. And it's they marry together, so I use whatever I can, whatever medium suits the subject.
Absolutely. That's really good. Yeah, it's nice to have a bunch of artists on here all chatting about not art, really. We're not talking much about art.
No, we're not.
And Philip, so you don't do Twin Souls anymore, but have you got any other things coming up on the TV production side? I know that we've seen you in a few Amazon productions and things like that. Is there any kind of other filming events you're doing?
Yes, I'm doing another filming event in London fairly soon, and then I've got a few more talks to do, lectures to do on UFOs. So yes, we're ending the year on a nice little front there. So it's been a busy year, but I'm very grateful for everything that comes my way. So yeah.
Oh, good. And can we just also mention the award that you got? Because I knew about that in the summer, but do you want to tell us, everybody, about the award that you received? It's fantastic news.
Yes, well, I had got the London and Southeast Prestige Award, and it came out of the blue, and it was a shock. And so I was very honoured to receive that for my clairvoyance. They put it down for my clairvoyance. They were very rigorous, the judges, in their analysis. And there were many other people in different categories, but I was very honoured. So that's the third jewel to the crown, so to speak. So I got one before in 2008 in Portsmouth for mediumship, and then I had the UFO award for dedication to the truth. So I'm very honored. But, you know, at the end of the day, it's nice, but we're all important and we each have our journey. So I'm very grateful.
Well, we pray that it continues. That's if it works.
A suggestion for your next book, Philip, call it Circumventing Clown World.
No.
Yeah.
I mean, it always makes me laugh, Clown World.
So your website, Philip, for those that want to check you out a little bit further, what's that again, please?
Yes, there's two. There's www.thekinsellatwins.com and www.philipkinsella.com. So just quite simple.
Excellent. And
Thank you.
Andy, you've got tunedinevents.co.uk.
Yes, tuneevents.co.uk. We're obviously doing lots of kind of clairvoyanty type stuff on a smaller scale. I'd love to work with Philip at some point in the future. That'd be really quite interesting.
Oh, well, you're kind of not that far away from each other, are you? In maybe an hour from each other. So you never know. Put it on a
Bedford,
wish list.
Yeah. The wish list.
I'm Hertfordshire, so yeah, we're touching borders.
All right. Lovely. Well, thank you very much indeed for joining us, gentlemen, and good luck with the Eternal Avatar and any future projects. So you've been listening to myself, Neil Ward, Andy Chaplin, Chris Mays, and Philip Kinsella on the Paranormal Peep Show on the Paranormal UK Radio Network. And have a great Yule, Christmas, happy holidays, and wishing you all the best for 2026. Good night.